Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is stumbles. We all stumble and fall and get back up again. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The nature of resilience and how does that happen? So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you joining us this morning. Good morning to everyone else who's with us. And today we're talking about stumbles. And really what we're talking about is resilience. We all have stumbles and situations in our lives that feel like they're just going to break us, where our heart just gets torn to pieces and somehow we manage to continue. And it's really rather remarkable, actually, that when we feel like we're just not able to go on anymore, that somehow we do. And obviously, there are times when we don't, that we succumb to the despair and make a permanent choice. I spent a lot of my life thinking about suicide, um, years and years, waking up and going to bed every day, just wanting not to be here. And there were times when I felt such deep despair that I couldn't imagine continuing just because nobody could live and be that unhappy, just with that broken heart. And I remember one friend in particular talked about suicide being a permanent solution to a temporary problem or a temporary condition, whatever. And in the midst of that, it didn't feel temporary at all. And somehow I kept putting one foot in front of another. And I know I'm not the only one who has experienced that feeling of being absolutely gutted and having nothing left to be able to put one foot in front of the other. And it's remarkable, actually, with that level of despair, to imagine having survived that, or to recognize how strong we are to be able to endure that kind of pain and despair and hopelessness. So I'm reading a book, listening to a book called The Book of Hope by Jane Goodall. And hope, as defined in the book, is not something that is a passive experience. It's not an experience that is mental purely, in that it's grounded in the world and grounded in the world as it is. It's not pretending that things aren't as they are. And it occurs to me that in these moments of dark despair that so many of us experience, even in those moments, it may just be a flicker, but there's this element of hope that keeps us carrying on. Even when we feel hopeless, most often, at least I think in looking back, I can say that even when it was elusive, even when I would reach for it and it might slip through my fingers, even in those darkest times, there was a flicker or a reflection of hope somewhere, even just a minuscule amount of hope can carry us forward. And that's grounded, I think, in those times of despair, in the will to put one foot in front of the other, and if we're not able to stand, to actually crawl just an inch by inch. And that action in and of itself helps to generate further hope. So when we feel despair about our world, taking some kind of action can help to move us more deeply into that hope. And the action might be an action of self-care, even to nourish and nurture ourselves in it through those times of despair. I was speaking with a friend yesterday, and they had a situation where they did everything they could do to try to save an animal, that a pet, and the animal died. And they took the loss in stride, as they have so many other losses. However, what was showing up was a deep despair and a sense of inadequacy at not being able to save that animal. But the thing is, they made superhuman efforts to save that animal. But aside from that, what happened was that despair over that loss, the sadness over that loss, became something like self-blame. And it then percolated out into life itself and life in general and the world, and became a deeper and deeper pit of despair. And I think that this is a pattern that so many of us experience, which is kind of a deflection in its way, where we manage whatever the situation is that causes us deep upset. And then from that situation, while we may not experience the deep upset specific to that, we start experiencing upset in all different arenas, in further arenas. And so we deflect or divert our upset. It's like we're upset about something here, and we have a limited capacity to express around that. So we go and we have an outlet for that elsewhere. But I see that this is something that happens for people with depression, is that there may be a catalyzing incident, a triggering incident that creates an initial upset. And then that upset just snowballs into other areas, so that the depression looks to get fed. I was talking to another client yesterday, and they were talking about this hungry ghost, a part of themselves that just needed to be fed and was never satiated. And I think that that's kind of what happens with this dynamic of depression, where it just looks to be fed and justified and validated. And if we're looking to validate upset or depression or even anger, we can find all kinds of ways to do that, all kinds of reasons. There are all kinds of reasons to be depressed if we want to look for them. Of course, there are all kinds of reasons to celebrate as well. There are all kinds of reasons to find joy. It's just that we're not as culturally oriented toward that. We're more culturally oriented toward doom and gloom. And it's important to recognize that people who are afraid are easy to control. And when we are in our strength, when we are feeling whole, we are better able to think and evaluate independently. So this notion of stumbles and our resilience, we even from these places of deep, dark despair, it is really quite remarkable how we have the ability to come back and go beyond, even to move out of the states of despair and sadness and loss into places of wholeness and empowerment. And sometimes it's a function of time, where we experience a loss and it's very, very, very present. And over time, it lessens. Not always, but in many, many cases. Or what happens is it deepens. So it gets covered over. And then these things that are covered over can reemerge and tend to reemerge when we find ourselves in the darkness again. So in talking about the darkness, it reminds me, or it brings up the notion of working with our shadow and how important it is to be able to befriend that shadow, not to suppress, deny, repress, but to befriend that shadow as teacher, all parts of ourselves, the parts that are joyful and playful, and the parts that are fearful and angry, all of those parts, that they're actually not isolated. They're all part of a greater whole, part of a greater system that is who we are. And all of these aspects of self provide the opportunity for learning and growth and awareness and resilience, to be able to move beyond the stumbles. Because there is a place where we can see ourselves in that darkness without succumbing to it. If we can step back, if we can give ourselves some distance and the ability to be the observer rather than being spun into the depths of the vortexes of darkness, then we can give ourselves compassion and patience going through the darkness, not to avoid it, but to allow ourselves to experience it, to allow our bodies to literally metabolize the experience, the emotion. And I had heard for years that depression is anger turned inward. And I think in my case, that was probably true to a great degree. When we have these experiences that elicit strong emotion, it's important to be able to process that emotion, like to experience it. Doesn't mean acting out, but it does mean allowing the energy of that to move. Emotion is energy in motion. It truly is. I see this again and again in the thousands of sessions that I've done with clients. And when people have surges of emotion and they're attended by tears, the tears are this release of energy that has been stored and compressed and condensed in their bodies, often creating physical pain, beyond the emotional pain, actual physical pain. And people discover and experience oftentimes a release of physical symptoms as they release the emotion, because it is energy, and we can feel it. After that release, there's a different experience of being in our body. There's a different energetic balance. Even if you think about tension, you know, when we hold tension, we're compressing, we're condensing. When we release, there's more of a flow. And I guess the idea is to be able to experience the stumbles, experience the sorrows, experience the slings and arrows of life, and to allow that that's part of it without making it the meaning of everything. So this person, in their experience of pain, was talking about what kind of creator would create a world filled with such pain. And I think it can be tempting to fall into the focus on the pain rather than the joy, or rather than the balance, that there is a spectrum of experience, and it's a broad spectrum, and we can honor all of it. It's all an opportunity. And the way that I think about it sometimes is like, this is the 10 ticket ride. You know, people pay money to go to horror movies or to go to amusement parks and go on roller coasters that terrify them. And what if this is that 10 ticket ride where we just signed up for this epic experience of pain and pleasure, sorrow and joy, ecstasy and devastation, to be able to feel all the feelings, to be able to have this vast spectrum of experience, this sensual, emotional, intellectual odyssey, spiritual odyssey, just to be able to have the experiences. And some of us write these stories of desperate hope and despair, you know? And some of us write, well, we write stories of triumph too. So tragedy and triumph. If we look at our lives as screenplays, kind of, as movies and stories, there's such remarkable stories of resilience, and it is often through the deep pain that we experience and what we consider tragedies and the things that have devastated us. It is often through these things that we find our own calling, find a sense of purpose, find meaning, find understanding, find another level of awareness and consciousness. So let's take the stumbles as gifts too, and dust ourselves off, and take the time we need to stand up again. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to share these morning musings. So until next time.